Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Goodness Village podcast. My name is Hunter Van Dam, and I have the chance to sit down with my friend, Sofia Acero. Sophia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Dude, I'm stoked just to sit down and hang out and just share life, share what your experience with Goodness Village is.
Yeah.
So, folks listening in, Sophia is one of the pastors at CrossWinds Church. We get to share property with CrossWinds here at the Freisman Dairy. So, a lot of great partnerships and collaborations between Goodness Village and the church. And Sophia has a cool opportunity or a cool experience in that because she lives here on the property. The church owns a number of houses here, and we've kind of integrated Goodness Village into kind of an existing community that was already here through Crosswind staff. So, Sophia, you live in one of the houses here at Goodness Village, or
Y-
not at Goodness Village, but next to Goodness Village.
yes.
Um, how's that been? What's your experience living like within Goodness Village's neighborhood?
No, it's been great. I mean, I think there's a lot of, I guess, stigmas that come with, first of all, living on property at church property. That's never really fun. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what kind of condition the house is in that you've been given.
Hey,
So
now for folks that are listening, I used to live on the Crosswind Church property before Goodness Village, and I used to live in the same house that Sophia currently lives in.
Mhm.
So, is that a dig towards me, Sophia? What's
Just
going on
a
here?
slight. I was just wondering if you were going to pick it up or not, but figured
For
I'd throw that one in there.
the
But
record, I left that house totally fine and clean.
no, it was great, and I'm so thankful for just a roof over my head. I can only imagine my neighbors. Obviously for me, not being able to afford, housing in this area just as a pastor and working, it's so it could get really just intense and overwhelming. But I'm really thankful that this property came with a couple houses, and lo and behold, I was right next to Goodness Village, which is an amazing, amazing ministry, and my neighbors are so cool. Um, I remember when I first moved in, one of the facilities guys that helped me move in here that works for the church, was also very good friends with the neighbors, and he was just like, "Oh, you're gonna love it here. You like
Hmm.
basically moved into a neighborhood." And
Yeah.
it was really cool for me because you think you're gonna move into this like church house, you're gonna be alone, and it's on a dairy farm for crying out loud. You don't know what was going on in my mind was like, I am literally gonna be out in the middle of nowhere. Um, some would like that, but, it was kinda cool to get introduced right away, and I had the privilege of moving in when neighbors were already there, and there was a neighborhood already built and set, and, it was a cool rhythm to walk into. And they made it seem to where I didn't really need to figure things out, or it wasn't like "Oh, you need to learn how we do it over here." It was just so simple and so easy, and every neighbor that I have bumped into and rubbed shoulders with, and it's been often, um, whether it's, back by our chickens or, bumping into them, working, on the weekdays. Obviously, they see me hustling and bustling. They're like, "Oh, are you working? Are you going to lunch? What are you doing? Well, you're always working." And I'm like, "Well, I also live here." They're like, "Oh yeah." They're just really great sense of humor, and every single interaction I've has been so wonderful and beautiful to get to know the wonderful human beings that I get to call neighbors.
That's so cool. I knew that, our neighbors were very neighborly to when, as you moved in, but I didn't realize to what extent.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I think what you moved into the onto the property, I think probably like 6 months or so after our
Mm.
first GV neighbors moved in.
Geez, was it really that early?
I think so. Yeah, because we
Wow.
had folks move in summer of 21. I think you
Mm.
moved in later last that
Yeah.
year or early, I don't know. But
Mhm. Mhm.
so you kind of moved into an existing neighborhood culture, it sounds like
Yeah.
you're saying. Can you talk
Oh,
about
well,
that?
that's what it felt like. So it's kinda interesting that you tell me it was only, like, 6 months really after all the neighbors kinda got settled in and they were probably new themselves, but, um, I think for me, it seemed like it already had, like, a cool rhythm to it.
Mm.
Um, Nobody was like I said, you move into a neighborhood and you get this image of a neighborhood, and you move in and, you got your stuffy neighbor across the street that never talks to you, that always takes out the trash at a particular, uh, you know, time of day, and you're just like, "Okay, never talking to you." But, like, around here, there was no, like, rhyme or reason for anything. It was just really cool. I felt like the neighbors, they welcomed me right away, everyone always asks, like, "Do you work for the," like, they automatically assume, like, either you work for the church or what's going on here? Like, what, I see you in the house, the one over there, like, so you work for, what exactly do you do? So they were very curious as, like, what I do, what my job position is. Um, I think it also, it goes to show, if you just have a lot of people say, like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm a happy person." Well, tell your face that. Like, sometimes we don't carry our face as a open, welcoming, place to say, but I think the neighbors have just such welcoming faces. I mean, each one of them, what I love is each one looks up from the ground, they make eye contact with it, and I always say hi. And I don't even get to just say hi to them like, "Oh, that's one of," they make eye contact with me, and it's really, for me, it's a treasure because eye contact is huge. But, it's like, I get to see them and they get to see me, and it's like this, like, understanding and knowing, like, we may not ever be best buds, but we're neighbors, we're here, we're doing life together, and it's a treasure to get that from each one of them. Not one of them has just, like, not looked me in the eye.
That's really cool.
Mhm,
Yeah, there's obviously the literal, you see them, they see you, but
mhm,
what I've got to learn through, well, since being part of Goodness Village and especially recording these podcasts is, um, talking with neighbors and staff and volunteers is that there's this almost the sense of pride that people have in the village and all the best connotations. Like our neighbors have a place to call home. They have neighbors. They have a neighborhood. They have
mhm,
a community that is safe and
mhm,
supportive. So it's really cool to see that branch out from beyond our Goodness Village program to just our neighbors in the Tri Valley. Our volunteers have experienced that, but you experience that firsthand. Pretty much every day it seems
mhm,
because you live next to these
mhm,
folks.
mhm.
That's really really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so special about living on property with Goodness Village and with my neighbors. I get to meet and talk with and make different conversations with each one's at different times. I have the privilege of knowing one particular neighbor really well, um, and it was a treasured friendship for a spell there, and it was really really cool. He used to tell me all about his stories of war and his children, and got to know his family and where his family was at now, and I even got to hear. I don't know if it's because I'm a pastor or what, but you almost hear them opening up, to just anybody who'd be willing and take the time to listen. Again, I go back to making that eye contact. I think when they know that you see them, not just see them visually, but see them as a human, as a person with feelings, emotions, a past, um, and you're just like, "Tell me more about that." Time is a huge treasure
Mm,
in the neighborhood, I think, you know, but given them time, each one, I found out history stuff, um, family disputes and things that they still hold on to, and, um, getting to hear all that, somehow I find myself in relation to that, and I could be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, me too." Um, but I think it was really cool kinda meeting one particular neighbor who just walked me through, like, just their past, their fallout, but then their, restoration of their family, which
mm,
was really cool to get, like, a whole 180 story of them, and another neighbor who just stepped up as an emergency flood watch, person, who, when we were having floods one night and got to meet them a little bit more, they came up, they're like, "Here's my number, if you have any, like,
mm.
I'm gonna be on night watch tonight if there is a flood, or if you need help." And knowing that I live alone, it was so special to even see some of my neighbors, like, kinda take up that arm for me and just be like, "Hey, you're part of this community too. So you're not apart, you're not separate, you're part. So, hey, here's my number. If you need anything, like, any more sandbags or this, like, you let me know."
That is so cool and encouraging because that is you having an interaction and relationship with a neighbor
Mhm.
and not a neighbor at Goodness Village, the
Yeah,
formerly unhoused tiny home
yeah,
program X, Y, and Z. It's just, oh, that's just so and so.
yeah.
And there's a creek that runs through the property, so there's flooding when there's rain, and like just
Yes.
to see your neighbors take care of you or at least
Mhm,
be available.
mhm.
It's so cool. That's kind of what the whole thing's all about, you
Yeah,
know?
I think it really does. I think each one of them take it differently, but it's come very organically to some, and the ones that I've interacted, and that's just two of the many that I've got. I just bumped into another one yesterday. I just met them. I've seen them around, haven't had the chance to actually sit and talk, but just pulled me aside and like, "Hey, sweetie, like, Yeah, and it's so the warmest tone, and it just intrigued me, like, oh, like, it
Mm,
was just immediate, like, I've always been told that I have this personality, like, every time somebody meets me, they're like, "Dude, you make people feel like immediate family."
mm,
And I feel like some of our neighbors have that too, where I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, like you said, it's not just a person who used to be formerly unhoused and they're living in Goodness Village. It was just a person, and their tone was so warm and so welcoming, and it made me feel like family right away, and I was like, "Well, that's weird, but it's not weird." Um, that's what people get, what they read from me, and I never really got that from somebody else until this neighbor was just like, "Hey, sweetie," older neighbor, and just finally just, like, got to have a conversation about where they came from, and they got to hear my story about, and they were commenting on my tattoos, like, "Oh, so you're a pastor with tattoos, huh?" Like, it was just kind of fun how they're stuck in their old ways as well. They're like, "So they haven't kicked you out yet?" I'm like, "Oh, no, still waiting on that," but it was really cool to hear them just talk with me about that, and just where they used to actually attend this church years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, back when we were in a different campus, so about 15 years ago. So they were able to tell me how it was and their experiences, and that got us into just music and talking music and bands, and so it was a really cool conversation.
That's so cool. Yeah, we got 28 houses and 28 different neighbors with their
Mhm.
own stories and backgrounds and
Yeah,
experiences, and it's just cool to see what the Goodness Village program is able to do by
yeah,
just taking the survival necessity out of, the unhoused experience and say, "Hey, we're gonna take care of you. You got a house, you got security, you got
mhm,
people." And the rest of it is just we're building community, we're building
yeah,
trust, we're building
yeah,
relationships, and it's just really cool, and I say encouraging all the time, but that's how I feel. It's
yeah,
encouraging to see that program approach of what Goodness Villages expand beyond the program with
yeah,
just neighbors. And I've heard very similar things from volunteers and other folks I got to talk to about, hey, what's your experience or how do you like Goodness Village? And hearing these really cool stories.
mhm, mhm.
So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sitting down and hanging
Of
out.
course.
So we are going to wrap this up the same way that we wrap up all of our podcasts. And it's how we wrap up all of our staff meetings. It's silly, but it's a big old alligator clap. So stick your arms out. I'll count 3, 2, 1, and we clap together. You ready?
Mhm.
3, 2, 1. Thanks for listening to the Goodness Village podcast. Production and recording done by our operations team here at the Village. Music was created by Club 88 member AJ Parr. If you want to know more about Club 88, this podcast, or Goodness Village, visit our website at gvlivermore.org. Don't forget, new episodes drop on Fridays. Thanks again for listening to The Good Pod.